Call to order a meeting for the normal town council for June 4th, 2018. Please call the roll.
Mayor Kus?
Here.
Mr. Fritzen?
Here.
Mr. McBride?
Here.
Mrs. Cummings?
Here.
Mrs. Lorenz?
Here.
Mr. Preston?
Here.
Mr. McCarthy?
Here.
We'll begin with a pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. There were no requests for public comment. We'll move on to the omnibus agenda items considered routine and will be handled with one vote unless a council member would like to pull an item for discussion. I'd like to be excused on voting on any bills I may have incurred in my duties as mayor.
I'd like to be excused from voting on any bills I may have incurred in the course of my duties in council.
Ms. Cummings?
I wanted to talk about G and I, but I also would like to be excused from any bills incurred in my duties.
Move approval.
Second.
Second.
Mr. McBride?
I'd like to be excused from the GLT bills.
Thank you.
Now I move approval.
We have a motion for approval in a second. Items considered under the omnibus vote tonight are approval of the minutes of the public hearing of May 21st, 2018, approval of the minutes of the regular meeting of May 21st, 2018, approval of town of normal expenditures for payment as of May 30th, 2018, a motion to approve recommended Harmon Arts grant awards, a resolution to approve bids and award a contract to Champaign Signal and Lighting Company for the Beaufort Vernon Traffic Signal Upgrade Project. Supplemental motor fuel tax resolution in the amount of $31,600 for the Beaufort Vernon intersection traffic signal upgrade. A resolution accepting the low bid and awarding a contract to KK Stevens Publishing Company of Astoria, Illinois for the printing of the Parks and Recreation Department's fall, winter, spring, and summer activity guides, and that is in the amount of $28,155.66 plus postage. A resolution to waive the formal bidding process and accept a quote from Dryden Equipment Incorporated for the replacement of the halogen valve emergency shutoff system at the water treatment plant at a cost of $35,985. Please call the roll. Oh, I did miss one. You're right. Also included is an ordinance establishing prevailing wage rates. Now you can call the roll.
Mr. Fritzen?
Aye.
Mr. McBride?
Aye.
Mrs. Cummings?
Aye.
Mrs. Lorenz?
Aye.
Mr. Preston?
Aye.
Mr. McCarthy?
Aye.
Mayor Kus?
Aye. Item G is a resolution authorizing the filing of the town's Community Development Block Grant 2018-2019 Annual Action Plan. Ms.
Move for
Cummings?
approval.
Second.
Ms. Cummings?
Yes, I don't want to overly alarm anyone. I just had a few questions, and I had already talked to Pam, so just wanted to know, how do we prioritize and decide on the projects we select for this particular grant? Because I'm a little familiar with some of it, and I was just interested seeing the types of projects our community has selected versus some that I know that have been selected by other communities.
Sure. I'm going to invite Taylor Long to come forward. Taylor recently took over the administration of our CDBG grant program, and so I think he's prepared to talk about how our programs come to be in terms of their selection process. And then what we're recommending tonight is slightly different than the public hearing that we had a couple months ago, simply because we've got about $20,000 more in allocation this year. So that was nice, but I'll turn it over to Taylor.
Yeah, I think I can answer your question here. So there's a 5-year consolidated plan that's drafted up with the beginning of each new cycle for CDBG. So it's during that period that there's a pretty robust public participation period, as well as there's a community needs assessment that's done. And that's pretty much the point at which priorities are set. Then each year, what you're approving tonight is an example of each year the program comes back with some identified projects that fall in line with those priorities that are set during that 5-year larger plan. So everything you see is pretty much outlined at the get-go before it's planned yearly. I guess what I mean to say is we pretty much set our priorities at the start and then kind of build that out year by year. And so the nice thing, if there's a shortcoming that you feel in this year and the following year, is that we're currently in year 4 of the 5-year plan. So during next year's planning phase, we'll start, or next year's grant year, we'll start planning for another 5 years, and there'll be another robust participation period. On the back of the regional planning study just having been completed, there's going to be a whole lot more work pretty much initiated by the Regional Planning Commission, and I think you'll have seen in the plan here, there's an amount of money going toward the drafting of an analysis of impediments to affirmatively furthering fair housing, so that'll be incorporated. So it's pretty much on a 5-year basis, and we're just about coming up to the point where we plan another 5.
I think towards the end, you started kind of hitting on some things
Okay.
that I had questions. So I would look forward to seeing what you have in the next 5 years. One, if
Us
we're
too,
looking
it's
at more
exciting.
fair housing type projects being
Yeah.
added to the listing.
And-
And one quick question too, for just for knowledge sake, the street resurfacing, sidewalk, and ADA ramp construction, that's just kind of lumped into everything with everything else, correct? Or is
It's-
there specific areas that are targeted for this particular grant?
Well, it's one of those things. Infrastructure, public facilities is a priority, and that large lump sum is, lumped, or it's counted, that amount, just like what goes towards public services with PATH and Unity, down payment assistance. So it's a part of that larger chunk.
If I could add to that, though, Taylor and Ms. Cummings, when staff is preparing the capital investment program each year, we also look at projects that we have on our plate or that we'd like to get done, and if any of those projects will meet CDBG regulations, including certain areas, low to moderate income areas and such that would qualify for CDBG funding, then we try to incorporate those projects into this grant allocation as much as possible. So in terms of sidewalk and ADA ramps, the dollars from our community development block grant program that are spent on those projects are only when they're in eligible areas.
Thank you.
Just a comment, since the issue's on the floor, and just good to see that our homeowner down payment assistance program, which is still running and probably something I suspect some folks are not aware of, and I imagine can be very helpful, so good to see that again.
Most definitely the most beneficial thing on a person-to-person basis.
Thank you. Further? Please call the roll.
Mr. McBride?
Aye.
Mrs. Cummings?
Aye.
Mrs. Lorenz?
Aye.
Mr. Preston?
Aye.
Mr. McCarthy?
Aye.
Mr. Fritzen?
Aye.
Mayor Kus?
Aye. Motion is approved. Item I is a resolution waiving the formal bidding process and executing an agreement with All Cities Management Services Incorporated in an amount not to exceed $82,872 for school crossing guard management services. Ms. Cummings.
Move for approval.
Second.
Like I said, this is not another one not to be overly alarmed about. I just wanted to get some clarification on this, and getting a little perspective for selecting this particular one. I didn't know a whole lot in order to do a lot of self-comparison to other companies and opportunities. So wanted to have some information from staff on that. I know and I understand this is a very important piece, and I understand reading through this, some of the struggles we've had, and I believe this is a good opportunity. I just want to make sure we're looking at the best option, and I didn't know myself how to navigate through that, because I know it's something that's a wide open.
Yep. For us, I mean, that's what our staff, when we actually looked at this last year for budget time. And there's not a lot of companies out there. I mean, there are some that will do security services and such, but there's not a lot out there that will do the whole kind of soup to nuts, if you will, for the crossing guard program. And you know, for us, in looking at it, we knew that we put it out to our other CALIA agencies that are throughout the state and said, hey, has anybody done this before? And we did get some feedback. There were certainly agencies that had. It seemed to be the All Cities Management Services was the one that the vast majority of them had gone with when they contracted with someone. And I think that's because in our staff's research, they're kind of the ones who are the largest company. They're the ones, I think they're in over 20 or 25 states. They manage over 250 different programs, and we just heard that they had signed an agreement with the city of Dallas to manage over 400 crossing guards for them. So they're a rather large company, and the one thing too that we found out in talking with those other organizations, they were all very happy with the services provided. But we also had an opportunity to talk with Bloomington. The city of Bloomington has been utilizing this company for over a year, and they said they were extremely happy with not only the quality of the individuals working those crossings, but really it's been a hands-off process for them. And so for us, when we're looking at it, we understand there's some additional cost. There's obviously that hard match of what we budget every year that's built into the program, but there's also a lot of those soft costs. Over the last 2 years, we've spent upwards of 300 to 350 hours that our staff has had to fill those vacancies. And, that's over 8 weeks worth of time, and that those officers could be utilized doing other jobs and other functions. I mean, they could be doing, working in the school zone for speed enforcement and high visibility rather than crossing kids. Plus, when that's happening, it's 2 hours a day. It is a little bit of it's a split schedule. It has to have the right individual who's dedicated to that, and that's what leads to a lot of our vacancies. But also, when our staff's deployed to that, you can't call them off. I mean, they're there, and if another higher priority call comes up, crossing the kids is a priority, and they need to be there. So the other thing that we find, a lot of those things, the vacancies come up in a matter of moments. 15 minutes, I can't make my crossing, and so that makes scheduling a little difficult. But that soft match, again, with those 300 to 350 hours of staff time is not calculating the number of hours that administrative hours, as far as hiring, training, outfitting, doing payroll, that my assistant chief does in overseeing the program. And that's multiple hours every week, because the group of individuals, they do a very good job, but there is a fair amount of communication that has to go on a daily basis with them, on top of, again, the payroll processing and all those other things. So as we'd mentioned before, the benefits too, that some of the other costs, reduced or eliminating the liability, the workers' compensation, they're taking it on because they would no longer be town employees. They'd be employees of the All Cities Management Company, and my understanding is that this company would take on our guards initially, so that we're not going to have people that are going to be out of a job. And I think because they're already managing the Bloomington program, if they bring our guards on board, they already have a local structure here in which they can manage that. And, hopefully we wouldn't, again, it's difficult to put a cost to it, but when it talks about workers' comp, the, crossing guards are out there, rain or shine, 180 days a year, and they're working in all different kinds of weather. And we have had some rather substantial workers' comp claim injuries that have happened over the years, too, from that program, and this would eliminate that.
And I think you answered my second question already, whether or not those who are currently working would lose a job.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yep, yeah, that we've had discussions with that company, and matter of fact, we have tentatively set up I think it's later this month, where it would be an opportunity. The company, if selected, would come in. They'd meet with our current guards and basically have them sign agreements if they want to continue on with the company, and so they've committed to that.
okay. No further questions.
Other questions on this? Please call the roll.
Mrs. Cummings?
Aye.
Mrs. Lorenz?
Aye.
Mr. Preston?
Aye.
Mr. McCarthy?
Aye.
Mr. Fritzen?
Aye.
Mr. McBride?
Aye.
Mayor Kus?
Aye. The resolution is approved. We have no general orders or new business. Before taking a motion for adjournment, are there comments or concerns? Mr. Fritzen?
The other day, Mike Straza had a letter to the editor published in the Panagraph, and he was somehow reading my thoughts. And then I read that letter, and I thought, perfect. I'm glad Mike wrote the letter, because it was needed. And I know there are many ways people absorb and consume news and opinion these days. And so for those who missed it, he talked about how our community needs to be willing to accept and embrace, changes that are happening here. And I'm sure the primary reference, without stating it, was to our largest employer and everything that's happening there. But I think it's important for us to understand, large corporations. We don't have a lot of large corporations in Bloomington-Normal. We have, some of some decent size, and have had others in the past that aren't here anymore. Manufacturer of vacuum cleaners is one in particular that used to be a big industrial employer, and of course Mitsubishi. But hopefully we have somebody replacing that. But so we're not used to the ups and downs of corporate America hitting home quite so readily. Just to the west, growing up here and just absorbing news on TV, in the evening news on TV a lot, the ups and downs of Caterpillar employments and layoffs and things like that, something that, I think all of us have some knowledge of. So, it's happening in our community to some degree. And it is personal because a lot of us know a lot of people who are affected. But as the State Farm effect has become kind of this phrase, my thoughts kind of went to, the State Farm effect has been a major positive for this community. And, there's a lot of emphasis on the negative aspect of their going through different transitions. And like I said, I understand that's personal in a lot of ways. And so, but the State Farm effect really has been an extreme positive for our community. And they're going through a time now where there are some negatives associated with it, but my expectation is on the other side of it, they're going to come out stronger and better equipped to compete in today's marketplace because of it. They wouldn't be doing it otherwise. I trust that. The other thing about the State Farm effect is that by having them in our community and them being successful and being the number one auto insurer in the country and all, that it probably suppressed some of our efforts to do economic development and to work hard in those areas. And now the current State Farm effect is causing us to ignite a little bit. And that's what Mike Straza was referring to there, that we have to kind of come together and respond to this, and we have the resources to do that. We have a good solid foundation. We got good businesses. We have the intellectual resources in the community to respond in a positive way. And so I just appreciated that. The entrepreneurial spirit still thrives. I know when we talked about Uptown recently, that there's a waiting list for people who want to be uptown and get into the storefronts up here. And there are plenty of empty storefronts, empty offices around the community, but I think the entrepreneurial spirit still thrives in Bloomington-Normal. And I think it makes it extremely important. And I know Ms. Reese is working with a smaller group from the larger Economic Development Council board right now to kind of map out where we're headed with economic development in the area. But that's all the more important today than it ever has been before. But we didn't realize that it was really important before too. We just weren't pursuing it like we probably should have. We have a strong Chamber of Commerce in the community right now that's very active in a lot of different areas. Things are happening on the education front too. We're leveraging higher education better than we ever have before. With talk about business incubators and small business development and whatever. And the largest number of employees in the country are employed in small businesses. Not in the big mammoth businesses. They take big chunks, but small business is really the heart and soul of the American economy. And we still have, a good footprint in agriculture. We have manufacturing coming back to the area with Brandt and Rivian coming in, and some of our smaller manufacturers around. We do have others in the business community, that thrive. The STEM initiatives, I have to throw that in there, but for Mr. McCarthy. But the STEM initiatives are important because they are in particular, I think, telling younger people that there's a place here for you in the future. So I just felt it. The State Farm effect can have many meanings. Right now, there's a bit of a negative connotation to it, but there's a huge positive connotation to the State Farm effect, that has gotten us to the point we are. And like I said, it also affected our willingness to roll up our sleeves probably and work as hard as we should have in economic development. And now it's having that effect that we are willing to roll up our sleeves and work hard in economic development. So again, appreciate Mike's letter and his thoughts on that, and something I think our community needs to embrace, like he said. And we've got what it takes, I think, to work through this and continue the path we've been on here in the last decade or so in Normal and Bloomington.
Thank you. Mr. McCarthy?
Not to belabor that point too much, thanks for bringing that up, Mr. Fritzen. I guess I just want to say is, with all the change going on, particularly at State Farm, there's a lot of fear going on about what if and some catastrophic thinking, I think, going on in our community. But there are so many positive things that are happening right now. Mr. Fritzen gave us a list. Even in our own backyard, craft brewing growing exponentially here in our community, one of the fastest growing micro businesses and macro and medium-sized businesses in the United States right now. Our own Distill Brewing, but White Oak on the other part of town, and Little Beaver and some of those, and a number of other startup companies certainly in the STEM area. So I think there's a lot of positive things that we can be talking about. Change isn't necessarily bad. I think most of the people in this room embrace it, but for a community conversation, I think it's really important for us to be focusing on those things that are happening and the advances in education. The new cybersecurity program at Illinois State University is one of the first 12, I think, cybersecurity bachelor's degree programs in the country. If you think about that, right here in Normal, Illinois, a U.S. government-approved cybersecurity site right down the street here. There's an amazing amount of things that are happening here in our community and so much positive to think about, and I think you're right. The changes at State Farm have helped us start to embrace all those things that we really need to be supporting. Thanks.
Pam?
Yes, I have one concern to add. Back in 2014, the Children's Discovery Museum was awarded a grant through the IDNR program for $116,000 to replace to put toward the Imaginaire exhibit at the Children's Discovery Museum. And shortly after that notification of the award, the grant program was put on hold. So we've been patiently, or perhaps not so patiently, awaiting the program to get reinstated. And we learned today that the governor has signed the budget, and the budget includes reinstatement of the 2014 grants. And so we're very excited that the Children's Museum will hopefully be soon receiving the check, the grant award of $116,000. Wow. So that's great news.
Good news. Motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Second.
Please call the roll.
Mrs. Lorenz?
Aye.
Mr. Preston?
Aye.
Mr. McCarthy?
Aye.
Mr. Fritzen?
Aye.
Mr. McBride?
Aye.
Mrs. Cummings?
Aye.
Mayor Kus?
Aye, we are adjourned.
Thank you. Thank you. Good call.
Oh, Howard is here.
Yeah, he kind of like.
I think he responds to my call for the measuring